Granny used to tell me all the time, sparks when faith and preparation combine. The road been right here all this time, but you gotta look with more than your eyes. And the small axe Jesse Ryle representing for I Just Star mindset, rich forever.
African centre, black centre at the core, you know. If you say for a lot of Muslims, for example, they put Islam first, and you know the Quran is not really, you know, telling people, you know, about Africa, about repatriating to Africa and these kind of things, and you know, black people doing for self. It's more about the nation of those who are Muslims, you know, regardless of, you know, the ethnicity or whatever. For those who are in Islam, where, you know, Rastafari is, you know, us as, you know, black people, about our nation of, you know, people of African heritage. And I think this is the reason why I didn't see that consciousness in Islam, which I saw in Rastafari. I didn't see Islam how it related to my, you know, my history of my ancestry, which I saw where as a descendant of a slave African, you know, with Jamaican roots, how Rastafari is part of, you know, my history and my journey and my story.
Rastafari, give thanks for that clarity there, my lord. So, all right. The I been traveling now, Rastafari for numbers of years, see? And now the I come up with a book, or the I write this book, The Rise of the Rastafari, Resistance and Redemption and Repatriation. Why do you think this book that the I put out now is valid to all the other books them that is out there?
The reason why I think this book is very important is, you know, you see a lot of books on Rastafari that are concentrated, you know, from just a biblical stance, yeah. Because in Rastafari, there's different ideologies. Not everyone is a Bible reader, not everyone is a Bible man, yeah. But many of the books are coming from that perspective that out there, the majority of them, yeah. This is, I'm not a Bible Rasta, yeah. I never come into Rasta, you know, reading Bible, yeah. I never see Haile Selassie as, you know, God Almighty, yeah. So with this book, it has that different perspective. I'll say my thinking is probably more in line with those such as like Mutabaruka, yeah, which I mentioned in the book. But in terms of the perspective, it does cover it because it covers the different mansions and groups. So I don't want it, I want this book to be an authority on Rastafari. I don't want it to just be what I think. So it covers, you know, it covers 12 tribes, it covers the ones who use the Bible, it covers the ones who don't. So it has a fair reflection of different. I think that's quite important as well, because it's not necessarily set on just a biased view from just one person's perspective. It also covers different grounds and reasoning behind it. But I think that's very important, the fact that a lot of it though is talks about not necessarily a biblical standpoint. It talks about, like, even when I mentioned Haile Selassie, a lot of it is about his legacy of, you know, him as a man, of what he achieved. And a lot of people don't know these things, but, you know, they quote Bible and say this about Haile Selassie, but it talks about his actual legacy of a man, of what he did. Other things which is important as well is the fact, because it doesn't use the Bible, it covers more from a black Afrocentric perspective, and I think this is why it's more universal and it appeals to a lot more people, not just outside of Rasta. Because I have Christians who read this book, yeah, and some of them are biggest fans. I have people, Muslims, I have people that are non-believers, but I say, you know, this is just a great book, an education, because it's historical. And that's what I said, the things like, you know, the Italian war against Ethiopia, you know, that's just historical, what happened, yeah, it was smart World War II. You know, the legacy of, say, Marcus Garvey, which is mentioned in this book, yeah, and that's historical, you know, what the pinnacle, and, you know, how that developed in terms of Leonard, how, you know, the Coral Gardens massacre, the persecution, reggae on Rastafari in England. It's got so much like information and ground and depth, and what it covers in terms of different topics, and coming in again from more of an African-centered, Pan-African aspect of Rastafari, rather than, you know, a lot of the kind of traditional biblical roots. So when you read the book, you can see that it has a very African, Pan-African outlook of Rastafari.
What's your outlook today? Separate and apart from what's in the book, what's your outlook today now and Rastafari movement? I'm sure you're seeing some footage, you hear news and things within the movement of Rastafari. Some things might be positive, some things might be disturbing, you know what I mean? Some things sound challenging. What the outlook on the whole movement today?
Well, I think the movement has lost direction, and it's been infiltrated, and this is why I think a book like this is so important to give, you know, because it gives an education, and it can be used even in schools. I've done lectures in schools and places and do that, and it drives home that, you know, that black consciousness aspect of Rastafari. What I think is happening when I look at the outlook of Rastafari is that the culture has become more prevalent. So, you know, people having locks, people smoking ganja, people listening to reggae music. Like I mentioned earlier, in Gambia, in Ghana, they just think Rastafari is a hairstyle. And even, you know, in Jamaica, in England, or in America, for example, what I find is that people are more disconnected from, like, you know, the African-centered aspect of Rastafari, you know, the black redemption, the revolutionary spirit of Rastafari, which Rastafari is a revolutionary movement which came to liberate black people from oppression, which is what happened. And they're more into the cultural aspect, or people are more into, say, the biblical ideology of Rastafari, where they just, like, say, deify Haile Selassie. And this can be problematic, because it means then that the foundation of Rastafari, you know, in terms of a black liberation revolutionary movement, is lost, and people are just expressing a culture of it, or people are just then deifying Haile Selassie. And then this is when it becomes a movement where you have people that are not necessarily connected to it, for example, that are not, or, you know, of African heritage, like white people that are coming into it. You see reggae festivals, white people dancing up and down, chanting Jah Rastafari, going on like they are more Rasta than you as a descendant of a slave African from Jamaica. And this is the kind of problem. And then even black people that come into the movement, and they just see it as like this kind of, this one love thing, where, you know what, it's all people, where this movement came for the liberation of purely black people. The man like Howell and used to say, like, you know, white people the devil, yeah? That's real Rastafarianism. Like, that is how the movement is. It came for black people, purely for black people, for our redemption, descendants of enslaved Africans to be precise, and for us to forward onto Africa. So when you deviate to just, you know, the worship of Haile Selassie, and Haile Selassie is important. He's the head of spirituality. Without Haile Selassie, there's no Rastafari movement, no doubt. He's some people look at him as literally God, some people look at him as a reincarnation of Jesus, some people look at him as an idol, some people look at him as a great king. Amongst Rastas, there's different, you know, ways in how people look at Haile Selassie, but he is the core of the spirituality of the movement. But at the same time, it's not to say, you know what, this movement, and I was reasoning with Bredger early, the Rasta movement didn't come about because of the teachings of Haile Selassie. The Rasta movement came because there was a need for black people to free themselves on the colonial, in the island of Jamaica, free themselves from white oppression after 400 years, and free themselves out of slavery. After that, we started to know, you know, from speeches and things, what Haile Selassie said and his teachings. But at the core of it, you know, was, you know, how we as black people, you know what, can start to do from ourselves, can become independent, build a nation, which is what they did in Pinnacle, and, you know what, head forward onto Africa, and be proud of our hair, be proud of our skin color, be proud of our, you know, our hair, be proud of our Africanness, and, you know, and have an identity, because it was an identity that was taken away from us from slavery, in terms of a language that was lost, a culture, you know, everything was stripped away from us as a people. So when Haile Selassie became Emperor of Ethiopia in 1930, it was important because at that time, you know, all Africa was being colonized. Yeah, apart from Liberia, it was a colony. It was the only, you know what, black monarch that we saw. So he represented, you know, independence and royalty and black pride, and a memory of, you know, some of us were kings and queens before slavery. So it's important that we look at, you know, the context of Haile Selassie, and we also give credence to that, and not just be like, you know what, it says this in verse in this and the Bible, and we just become, like, you know, stagnative, and just become, you know, like Christians.
For real. Interesting. That's separate and apart from the book and Rastafari. They been here in Ghana for probably what, 2 months? Did I say?
2 months, yeah.
All right. How do you see, like, you know, once coming home from the diaspora, the challenge that pose one's here on the continent? Do you think it's fear for us, you know, coming home have to be, you know, faced with such challenge as Africans?
I think the challenges here would be, I think what you was alluding to is like us that are coming there in terms of, you know, our rights and being seen as Africans, like residency and citizenship, etc. And the way it appears, and this might be a surprise to people in Ghana, Ghana have kind of staged it where it looks like, you know, everyone from the diaspora can just come here and they're giving out citizenship to everyone left, right and centre, and you can just come here. It's not that simple, and that's not the case. If that was the case, there's thousands of people from the diaspora that are here in Ghana. Yeah, most of us don't have citizenships. If that was the case, we could just land to Ghana and the next day get citizenship. We would all have citizenships. Yeah, but there's a very small amount of people, probably in the hundreds, if not small thousands, that actually have citizenship. In Ghana, you can get citizenship after you've lived there for 5 years, whether you're white man, Asian man, wherever. Yeah, you can apply for citizenship after a 5 year stay. Yeah, so a lot of times where you see those citizenship ceremonies, which they had, I think, like a month ago, and during the year of return, they had a citizenship where they showed people getting citizenships. People fail to realize, a lot of those people had been living in the country for a long time, past that anyway. Yeah, so it wasn't like, and some of them been living in there illegally. So it wasn't like, you know what, they just came, landed on the plane, and was, you know, given papers and saying you've got citizenship. There's still a lot of bureaucracy, and there's a long process to not get in terms of citizenship and even residency in the country. Because even, you know, outside of citizenship, just to get residency, if you go to the Ghana Immigration Office, they will say to you, for example, if you want to stay in the country, you know, these are the requirements, is that you need to either be a student, you have an NGO, non-government organisation, or you're working with an NGO, you set up a business, you're married to a Ghanaian. Those are basically the four, stand corrected if I miss anything, but those are basically the four main ones that you need to, or you was married to a Ghanaian and then maybe something happened in the relationship and you're not married now, you can get a longer stay. And then there's I believe there's the right to vote, but you've got to be living in the country for, I think it's at least 7 years before you can apply for that. As far as I'm aware. Now, the immigration procedure, so it's not as straightforward as, you know what, you can just come here and even get a residency stay. Now, I do understand one perspective. Obviously, they don't want to have a public charge in the country or have refugees in case if everyone comes over and people can't sustain themselves. But I think that there should be a different policy, because that's a general policy for everyone, between, you know, just a general, say, a white man from Europe or Asian man from India that comes versus a descendant of a slave Africa who's coming back, you know, to find his roots, to be, you know, come somewhere that we was taken away from anyway, and now we're coming back. And the ones that are coming back, the majority of us, you know, are contributing to the economy in various different ways. So I think that should happen. I think maybe it's a matter of time, because, you know, this influx of, you know, people from the diaspora, there's always been people that have been coming to Ghana, but the influx of the amount of people that are coming now, the numbers are getting higher. So it could be that, you know, it's time, but I think definitely we'd love to see, you know, a better process to, you know, to facilitate people from the diaspora, where you don't have to go through, you know, all of the bureaucracy and all the paperwork and this. I mean, even getting a visa, stuff like having more visa on arrival. Like, I know during 2019, during the year of return, they made visas on arrival, and for about a week from December to January, they made visas on arrival during this year's beyond the return. But generally, if you're coming to Ghana, you need to get a visa as well, even if you're coming on a tour to just, you know, as a tourist for like a month or a couple of months. So I think more things, visa on arrival, but then when it comes to long-term stay, you know, having things for people in the diaspora that are coming here that makes the process a lot more smoother for us, in terms of, you know, we don't have to go through the same kind of bureaucracy and all of this paperwork and this, that and the other than, you know, it is for your other people that are classified as foreigners.
True, because I came in and I get, 90 days on a Jamaican passport. So I think probably that need to change. You know, coming from the diaspora, we're supposed to have, you know, better or different from, you know, everyone else who is coming in. And
I just want to say as well, you come on a Jamaica passport, because that's key, because I've got a British passport. If you come on a Jamaica passport, you can get, like you said, a 90-day stay. You get a visa on arrival, correct? If you've got a British passport, you can get a 90-day stay, but you need to apply for the visa in England, and that can take a month. It can take 2 months, a few weeks, you know, depending on, you know, the time.
True. Yes, I. So we want to see better policy in terms of returning diaspora and coming back to Ghana and other African countries who probably hold similar stance as Ghana with these restrictions.
Well, I think I know in Sierra Leone, at least if you've got African ancestry, I think through AfricanAncestry.com, you can get citizenship there. I know someone, Dynasty May, takes people to Sierra Leone on his tours, and some people that go on his tours with through African ancestry, if they prove that they can get that they've got Sierra Leone ancestry, they can get citizenship. But and also I know other people in Sierra Leone, and if you can prove on African ancestry, you can get citizenship. In Gambia, I used to live in Gambia. I've been in Gambia 4 times. In 2019, I lived there for 6 months, and then in last year I lived there for 6 months as well. That's when you was talking about my work with Blacksit, when you saw my videos in Gambia. And in Gambia, the process in terms of getting residency is a lot more easier. So I would say some countries is more challenging than others, but I know from the process in Gambia, I mean, I was there for the day, but it was sorted a day. It wasn't like you have to bring in this paperwork for that. The process of immigration in Ghana is like you have to have this paperwork. You have to get someone a Ghanaian to show their bank account. You have to bring them with you to immigration. You have to get this. You have to get this. It's just so much bureaucracy.
So it's like a European type of immigration border patrol type of system.
And these are the things that we need to change, because these are things put in place by the British, which have been upholded basically, just like the boundaries and these kind of things. So these things which are put in place that that obviously need to change, and new laws need to be put in place. And it's I had a conversation with a top immigration officer, because recently I had to get my my passport stamped for another 90 days, and he's a Pan-Africanist, and he's very sympathetic, because he was like, it shouldn't be, but it's going to take time. We're working, hopefully these things can change, because he was sympathetic, completely understood our situation, but he was like, but this is what the laws are at the moment, and we have to go abide with what the laws are at the moment, but hopefully in the future we want to make it so that people like ourselves can come and stay, and we don't have to go through this, and we don't have to get that, and we don't have to spend $2,000 to get take out a business visa, or have to go through this, get visa, that visa, and all of this kind of long stringent process.
True, makes sense, make a lot of sense. Yes sir. Yes my brother, well I know we have a whole heap to talk about, Zane, but I think we are going to leave some of it for the next time, Zane. We have a conversation, but it was great reasoning with the eye, my lad, and I'm looking forward to read the book first and foremost.
Yeah.
Zane,
yes,
and all the best with the rest of the work. And I must ask you, is there gonna be a second part of this book anytime soon or in the future?
Well, you see, the Rise of Rastafari, Resistance, Redemption, Repatriation, I originally released the first one in 2019. That one was actually a much smaller one. It was about half the size of this book. But true say, your knowledge is always expanding, and also as well, there's more things that I wanted to add, to make it, to get more in depth. I like that the first one, I mean, it's still a good size, you can read it in a few hours, etc. But the first one was good because it was a nice, easy read, but it covers so much information at the same time. But there's certain things that I wanted to add and expand on the information. So it wasn't last year, it would have been last year, 2000. No, it wasn't last year. Sorry, because we're in 2023 now. So last year, I did the revised edition, which I think was around April time that it came out. April, May, that I did the revised edition, and this is what the revised edition of the Rise of Rastafari. So it's got double the size. And what was possibly going to happen is, obviously I'm in Africa now, I'm in Ghana now. Another one, maybe in a few years time or 5 years time, there could be obviously more expanded information, because that's a very key important thing as well, because knowledge and understanding of things is always grows. So I don't like that some Rastas, some elders are very ignorant, they stay in the thing. When people say that, because I grew up in the 70s and the 80s, but how many Rastas grew up around in the 70s, 80s? If I mention people like Howell, Hibbert, Heinz Dunkley, the people, the founders, they don't know nothing about these people, and it's like, so this is what I'm trying to say. So people, when new information comes, they said we're living in a day and age where a youth can be 20, 30 that knows more than someone who's 60, 70 years old. Obviously an elder person has got more life experience, which is important, but when it comes to knowing, so what you have is a lot of people, and this is where the problem with Rasta comes, a lot of people that don't know it stuff, or don't know the genesis of the movement, but have followed it through someone who didn't know the thing, they then act on that as if that's Rastafari, that gets put up, and then that concept of Rastafari gets put out, and that's where part of the movement is to where it is today in terms of Rastafari misinformation.
So African Rastas, then, if I can call it, if I can call it that, that's my final question I want to ask the eye. How do you view Rastas on the continent from Rastas who are in the diaspora?
I think the knowledge on the continent amongst the Rastas that I've known here, whether in Ghana or Gambia or in ones that have been from the continent, gone to the diaspora, but on the continent, one of my friends said this quote, and I'm gonna use it. When I was in Gambia, he said, "No Rasta born in Gambia. All of the Rastas that come here come from foreign." And the reason why he said that is because the knowledge of it is very low. It's like they're not even Rastas. Like you go to Gambia, some people call them Rastas, but they actually they're Muslims, yeah. But because they have locks on their hair, they think that's what it is. And you have to try and get that thinking of it, because that's a disrespect to Rasta. How can you be a Muslim and you be a Rasta? It's two completely different things, yeah. And then people want to call themselves, that's what Rasta is. And the knowledge on the continent is very poor. Like, for example, of what Rasta is. Obviously, I need to go to more places and come amongst more people that know more. But as I said before, what you'll find, even in Ghana, what you'll find is that more the Rastas who have come across more that the foundation and know certain things, it's because they've either gone to diaspora or people from the diaspora have come here and showed them certain things. What you have in Ghana, Gambia, and from other parts of what I hear of Rasta is you have that basically people that come into it because of Locke's hairstyle, or because of Bob Marley from reggae music, or because of smoking ganja. So the cultural elements, but they don't know the genesis. And if you don't know why the movement emerged, why in Jamaica, what people were going through in terms of the colonial system, the people are trying to fight against the oppression, the descendants of enslaved Africans, being taken off their history, and the need to identify yourself, and why Haile Selassie is important, because to Africa they see that in a complete different way, because to them, if you go to say, like, even if you look at Ethiopia, that's coming from places where they've seen emperors, they've got their own heritage. In Ghana, they've seen their own kings and queens, and they've got their own traditions. But for those of us, in the diaspora, we never see black kings or queens. So Haile Selassie was a big thing when that emerged. So even that concept of why it's significant to us, yeah, is something that they don't quite understand. So they're just going to come on from more of a biblical stance, if they're going to a lot of them, if you're going to go into that Haile Selassie element in that way, or they won't see what he represents as a symbolism, embodiment of black pride and redemption and these kind of things. And yeah, so I think the liberation aspect, even though they might like a Bob Marley reggae song or whatever, African Unite, but I don't think the understanding of it is very much lacking.
Yes, my brother Sankofa, thank you very much for such eloquent explanation. You know what I mean? Yeah, and deliberation around such topic. I want to thank you for taking the time. It's an honor and it's a pleasure. As I said, we're going to link again and do more recording in the future, because I know that I have a lot to say. I know I could go on for hours right now, but we're just gonna keep it minimal for now. But look forward. Check out his books, where people can find the book.
The Rise of Rastafari, Resistance, Redemption and Repatriation. The book is available on Amazon. You can get it in paperback or you can get it in Kindle. So yeah, just go on Amazon and get the Rise of Rastafari. If you want to learn about my experience living in Gambia, I also have another book called Life in Gambia, the Smiling Coast of Africa. And well, I'm not going to tell you now, but you go look on Amazon, buy the book, and you can find out all about my experience when I used to live in Gambia.
Rastafari. So probably that might be one of the next reasoning that we're going to have the hype on the platform to talk about that book. See?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So give thanks again, my brother. And can they follow you on social media? Where can they follow you?
Yeah, follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram and I am on Facebook, sort of the best place. So if you type in my name, Makonnen Sankofa, that's MAKONNEN, and then Sankofa, SANKOFA. Type that name in Facebook or Instagram. You can follow me and then you'll find out what I do, because yeah, I promote. I've got a platform. I promote black authors as well, called the Black Book Show, and that's part of the reason why I'm here in Ghana. But that could be for the next reasoning.
Rastafari, yes, and there is also a radio personality on Galaxy Radio based in London, right?
Yeah, on Galaxy. So my radio show on Galaxy is every other Saturday. I'm on a radio presenter on 2 stations. So every other Monday on Luton Urban Radio between 8 and 10 p.m. And on Saturday, every other Saturday on Galaxy Radio, Galaxy Afui station, galaxyafiwi.net between 6 and 8 p.m. And that's my Black Book Show. That's when I interview authors of African heritage from around the world, and then they talk about their books. We feature different genres, but that's always great to find out about more of the variety of different authors that we have. Because people say, where can I get more books by black authors? But there's so many black authors in this day and age that are producing books, but you just have to seek and find.
True. Yes, my brother. Manners and respect, and give thanks again for taking the time. It's been an honor and a pleasure, my Lord. Peace and love, and give thanks.
Yes, Rastafari blessings.
Yes, I.
Smash that subscribe button. See you on the next video. I just start the mindset.